You are listening to the Atlanta Sports Podcast, the only podcast covering all of your teams. Bringing you the best sports news from the state of Georgia, from the professional ranks to the high school levels, we have it all. Welcome back to the Atlanta Sports Podcasts. My name is Frankie and Luke, and in a little bit we're going to be joined by Luke Winstall and Kyle Sandy, the owner of Sandy Spiel, the leader in GHSA basketball coverage. But first I want to take a moment to thank you for finding us, whether it be on iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher, or on our website, atlantasportspodcast.com. Remember, you can always follow us on Twitter at ATL Sportscast, and please do subscribe to us in one or more of the directories. That would mean a whole lot. And you can also contact us again on our website, or you can leave us a review in one or more of those directories. We would love to hear from you. We are now joined by Kyle Sandy, owner of Sandy Spiel, the leader in GHSA basketball coverage. And Kyle, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, you guys. It's a fun time of season right now, and I'm glad I'm able to try and break down some high school hoops with you fellows.
So starting off, which team has the toughest draw heading into the playoffs?
Well, I think out of all the classifications, if we're looking on the boys' side, I think the top right part of the quadrant in Class 7A is as difficult as it gets. You have teams like Westlake in there, who's the defending state champion. They have a bunch of high major guys like Chuma Okiki. He's a 6'8" small forward that is actually going to Auburn next year. So he's there at Westlake. You got Newton, who's been undefeated and ranked in the top 10 of the entire nation for a lot of the season, but they dropped the game to Shiloh recently, but they're in there as well. And then you got Bergmar, who is a guy named Al Durham, who is going to Indiana next year. And then even in there is Tips County, a team that is always a traditional South Georgia powerhouse that is always very formidable come state tournament time. So all those teams, that's four great teams that are all stuck in that top right corner of the Class 7A boys bracket that are really going to have to play well if they want a shot at even making it to the Final Four, let alone making it to a state championship game.
If you were to look at that same bracket, who has the easiest draw coming out of 7A?
Oh, boy. Well, I think the left side, the top left side of the bracket is a very, very weak compared to the rest of the bracket. So there's some teams in there like Grayson, Collinsville, Campbell, Etowah, Milton, Brookwood, Hillgrove, and Lowndes. So those teams in there, they have a nice route to get to the Final Four. But with that being said, those aren't those traditional major powerhouse teams. These are teams that have been in and out of the rankings, top 10 here and there. I think the only team that's ranked in that whole quadrant, there might not even be a team. I know Grayson has spent some time in the polls, but I don't think they're in there anymore. Collinsville actually just slipped in there to finish the regular season, and they're ranked number 10, but that's just one team in that top side there. So I think Collinsville and Grayson, the winner of that matchup right there is probably the favorite to get out of that quadrant. But that is a very evenly matched side of the bracket with a lot of teams that are pretty close to each other, and it should lead for some very exciting close matchups, I would think.
Are there any teams out there that just immediately come to mind in terms of they're struggling into the playoffs, or they've had a good season, but now they're kind of tailing off and not quite peaking at the right time?
Oh, boy, that's a good question. Well, we just want to stay in 7A since it's a popular place of discussion. I mean, what about Wheeler? You look at the Wheeler Wildcats. They were ranked number 2 in the nation to open up the season, and they don't even finish second in their own region. They got the 3rd seed. So Wheeler, who had 6 transfers coming in this year, they can play 5 Division I commitments or signees and put them all on the floor at one time. They can have up to 7 or 8 guys that are going to be playing Division I college basketball, but they finished 3rd in their region. But that is still a dangerous team there on that bottom right side of the bracket. And if they can advance to the Elite Eight, they'll likely face McEachern, who is undefeated and the number 1 team in the state right now, who actually beat Wheeler in the first matchup. So Wheeler hasn't really clicked on all cylinders yet this year. They have more than enough talent to do so. But I think sometimes it might come down to X's and O's And then the player chemistry on the roster has somewhat been up and down this year. But Wheeler has they have an interesting route to get to the Final Four, and they have to start playing good basketball now.
The first round of the playoffs generally has a lot of mismatches with the 1 seeds versus 4 seeds, but if you were to go to only one game in the first round, which game would you go see?
Oh boy, well I actually have a 4 beating a 1 upset in that Class 7A, and I think Brookwood's going to beat Milton. That's a game that'll be hosted by Milton. Milton has gone through some drama this year. Matt Kramer, their head coach, stepped down in the middle of the season after a little hullabaloo going on over there, and Sean Revels and Julian Barfield took over that program, and they never quite, really took off. They're playing in a fairly weak Region 5, but they finally beat Lambert, who beat them twice, so they beat Lambert in the region championship. But they're playing a Brookwood team that has the region player of the year, and Bubba Parham. He's a senior guard averaging about 23 points a game, and it's very impressive because this guy is unsigned and probably not a Division I guy, but he won Region Player of the Year over guys like Al Durham, who's going to Indiana, Lance Thomas, who is going to Louisville, Rayshawn Hammonds, who's going to Georgia, but this unsigned, undersized shooting guard actually won Region Player of the Year, and I really like Brookwood in that 4-1 upset on the left side of the bracket.
So are there any specific matchups, whether they're hypothetical or actual, that you'd really like to see?
Ooh, that's a good one. There's a lot in that Class 7A, but let's just look at some other brackets real quick. And I think one that would be interesting, I think Class 4A, if Henry County was able to get to the Final Four, and if Upson Lee was able to get to the Final Four, that would be a very fun semifinal showdown. Upson Lee is coming out of Region 2, and that's Middle Georgia, and people, are they Upson Lee for real? They're not really sold on them yet. I was able to see them play, and I saw them shellac LaGrange. They were up 30 points on LaGrange, who I have ranked number 3 in the state, and they just blew them out. And Henry County's been ranked number 2 after opening up the season, ranked number 1. Upson Lee's held the number 1 ranking since Henry County slipped. So if those two teams would play, that would be a lot of fireworks. Javon Green scored 57 points for Henry County in the Holiday Hoops Giving Classic, and he's going to George Mason. Then they have Damian Rosser, a big guard that's going to New Orleans. And Upson Lee has one of the best juniors in the state that people are starting to take notice of, Ty Fagan. He is a budding superstar. So that would be a lot of fun to see Henry County and Upson Lee play in the Final Four in Class 4A.
And with Upson Lee down in 4A, what makes them so good? They're undefeated, 27-0, but what makes that team so good?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's because these guys have really played together pretty much their whole life. I think I heard a crazy stat dating back to, like 6th grade or something, that junior class or sophomore class. They usually all played together. They were something like 125 wins and just 8 losses. I watched these guys play over the summer with a team called the Middle Georgia Supersonics. Now, that's a team that's all in that Upson Lee area, Crawford County, Taylor County, a couple players from Perry. So in that Middle Georgia region, and that's not, playing on the EYBL and all these big shoe circuit teams. That's just a locally homegrown team with guys that are all living, 40 minutes away from each other tops. And they've just learned how to win games. Ty Fagan, I mentioned, he's a star, left-handed, just smooth as butter guy that just got his first offer from Middle Tennessee State a couple months ago. And then they got a big guy inside named Trayvon Walker. He's 6'5", 6'6". He's only a sophomore, and he already has a scholarship offer to play defensive end at Alabama. So that tells you what kind of dual sport athlete he is. And they have a little point guard that looks like he's about 10 years old, but his name is Irie Scott, and he's a big-time player. He's maybe about 5'10", 5'9", 5'11" on a great day, but he really gets the offense going, and those three really carry that team. They have another kid named Michael Lee that can really shoot the 3-ball, and he really helps out a lot. So that's a good team to keep an eye on. I really do like Upson Lee, and they have really been putting everything together, and they've been racking up the wins.
Is there an underdog team in the lower classifications that you would expect to maybe make a run of the state championship?
Ooh, that is another interesting question. Let me see here. Well, if we want to go all the way down to Class 1A public, I do like actually, I'll give you 3 teams. Now, I'm not going to say this is actually going to happen, but there's just 3 teams that I really kind of like that are ranked very low, but if they get a couple good bounces, it could all work out for them. I like number 9 seed Quitman County. That's a team that has been ranked very high all season long. Very good guard play. Spud Nelson is a kid that averages about 24 points per game. They're going to have a tough road to get to the Final Four, but I really do like what they have. And then another team who's ranked 22nd, but opened up the season really hot, Twiggs County. They're the 22nd seed. They're going to have not necessarily a difficult road. It's not that terrible. Clinch County's the highest seed in that bottom right side of the bracket, but they have a kid named Zuri Brown. He's a very good point guard. They have a plethora of aggressive guards and a big space eater inside. So if they actually, are able to play to their potential like they did at the beginning of the season, there's no reason why they can't make a run to the Final Four. And then the last team I kind of like is Lincoln County. They're number 16 seed. They're hosting their first playoff game in school history. They're going to play Portal, who's coming over from that Savannah side of the classification. I see Lincoln County winning that game. Then in the second game, they're going up against the number 1 overall seed in the Class A boys public, and that's Troutland, another team from Savannah who scores a lot of points, but over there in Savannah, there's not a lot of great competition outside of Troutland. So Lincoln County, that's a team that plays very good defense. They might be able to catch them, and if they do catch them, then they're playing Quitman in the Elite Eight for a shot at the Final Four. So that's just 3 teams that are, very, keep an eye on. I mean, Class A public is, you never know who's going to show up. It's very wishy-washy with the teams. Everyone's pretty equally matched. So those are 3 teams I kind of like, Twiggs County, Quitman County, and Lincoln County for at least maybe 1 or possibly 2 upsets in the tournament.
While we were down in Class A, I saw something on your website today saying that Whitfield Academy and a few other teams down in Class A might have a reason to be upset with their seeding heading into the playoffs, as Class A does their seedings differently than other classifications. Can you explain how that system works?
Yeah, those they go by a power rating system, and I mean it's flawed like everything is. Rankings can be flawed, but the rating system, I kind of feel like it's something the GHSA uses to distance themselves from getting the blame and say, hey, we just went by the computers. I'm sorry if we left your team out. You got a bad ranking. It's just by the computer system. It's kind of like what college football did with the BCS back in the day, and now we, of course, moved to the playoffs and the committee and all that stuff. But Whitfield Academy, that's a good team with Region Player of the Year, Isaiah Hart. He's probably about 5'10", 5'11", but this kid is a dynamo scorer who really gets buckets for them. He's averaging well over 20 points per game. That's a guy that a couple people think he could be a fringe Division I player. He's just a little small, but he's slayed the Dragons throughout his career, and he's pretty much a one-man band. Whitfield Academy, and the rest of his supporting cast is up and down. We got Jimmy McCarthy, a couple guys that do a little bit here and there, but he's definitely the straw that stirs the drink. So as an 11 seed, I think Whitfield Academy is very dangerous. And you look at a couple other teams like Athens Christian and even Lakeview Academy, who I do like, but Lakeview Academy is not the second best team, even though you got the second seed, and they have even admitted like you can kind of manipulate the system, schedule teams very methodically, and get a win here, get a win there, and you can end up with some high point totals to get a good seeding. But Whitfield Academy, that's going to be a very good, a good team, tough team to get knocked out of the tournament. They get a home game against Prince Avenue, and then they have a Southwest Atlanta Christian match in the second round, which could be difficult because they do have some size and a guy going to Florida and DeAndre Ballard. But Whitfield Academy is definitely a dangerous team, especially with Isaiah Hart playing point guard.
The championships are now at UGA and Georgia Tech, so what are your thoughts as to the change in venue?
Well, I got to say it's great. It is definitely a great thing that we got out of that treacherous, crazy Macon Centerplex, which is somewhat of a dungeon over there. I mean, they didn't have Wi-Fi. We had dirty diapers under seats. We had cracks in the floor. The baskets were the wrong regulation. They were too far back. All this, I mean, everything that could go wrong went wrong. The first day, they had half the lights turned out in the stadium, so if you want to go and check on the championship pictures, the pictures are pretty much in dark photography. You can't even see anybody because it's such bad lighting in there. But it's very good that they moved there. The next step is we need the GHSA to tell us where these state championships are going to be held at. We know it's at Georgia and we know it's at Georgia Tech, but we don't know which classification is playing where yet, and it's just leading to some headaches. I mean, we're about to tip off. The people need to know where these championships are going to be at for the respective classifications. But other than that, it is a major positive that these great athletes and great teams are getting showcased in high major locations such as Athens with Georgia and then Georgia Tech and Atlanta. Those are great locations, and it's a lot better than going into the center of the earth in the middle of nowhere in Macon, where it's just not a top-notch facility like Georgia and Georgia Tech are.
You also tweeted out earlier today that the GHSA may not televise the championships this year. What are your thoughts as to that situation?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. I just know right now GPB, who's been doing it since I was a little kid, they are not broadcasting the games this year. They're completely shut out of it. They said Play on Sports is supposed to do it, and I don't know, is that going to be just simply streamed via NSHS or one of those online networks? Do it that way. If you're going to do it that way, are you going to make people pay like $10 to watch the championship game when they could be watching it for free like they've done the past however many decades? I'm not happy about that. That's not a good movement. Hopefully somehow these games are on TV. Maybe they strike a deal late with something. But I'm not too optimistic about that. And that is a crying shame if these games are not readily available for people at home to watch some state championship basketball. I mean, this is the best state in the entire nation. If you're going to ban everybody from even watching these games, that is just a terrible, terrible misfortune for the state of Georgia.
The recruiting realm is very rich in Georgia, yet most of the top talent prefers to go out of state, bypassing pretty much all of the in-state colleges. So what do you think is the reason for this, and what do you think can be done to fix this for all the teams in the state?
I think people just need to hunker down and say, boy, oh boy, I live in the state of Georgia. I'm Georgia, and I'm Georgia Tech, especially if I'm Kennesaw State, if I'm Georgia State who's doing a good job. You don't need to look anywhere else. You got to start in your own backyard. I know you want to try and outsmart everybody and go overseas and get some Serbian kid or do this or do that and go to the West Coast, blah, blah, blah. You got everything you need in the state of Georgia. You got to make Georgia your home, and you got to protect your home turf. Guys like Bruce Pearl over at Auburn, he is just poaching the state, taking guys every single year. Jared Harper is a freshman right now. He was at Pebblebrook last year. He's been great over there. He's got DJ Montgomery. He's going to end up going there. He's only a junior right now at Wheeler. Jared Jones, same thing. He's at Pebblebrook. Just all these guys, talented guys, are ending up at schools outside of Georgia. I would just hope that these Georgia programs, I mean, boy, oh boy, you're not coaching in Montana or New Mexico and talent is just not really there. You got so much to choose from. You got to protect your state. You got to get these guys to stay there. Now, I will say Georgia State has done a great job of that lately. Sharman White, who was a 7-time state championship winning coach at Miller Grove, he's on the staff over there at Georgia State as an assistant coach now, and they're pounding the tape in the car, getting a lot of Georgia guys. Josh Linder will be there next year. He is a 6'7" forward at Veterans right now. We got Kane Williams, who's a 6'3" guard at South Baldwin, who will be there next year. And they have a freshman who's been a stud so far for them, DeMarcus Simmons, who was originally supposed to go to Mississippi State, decommitted and ended up at Georgia State after having a great career at Buford and Gainesville. So if you're in the state of Georgia, you got to recruit your own state. And if they don't, it's going to continue this trend where you see like 40 guys going Division I and only 4 of them staying in the state. That's very sad.
Are there any star players out there that you see maybe putting their team on their back and carrying them far in the playoffs and across all classifications? Are there any guys that come to mind?
Well, a popular pick that is a guy who's highly regarded, a 5-star guy who hasn't announced where he's going to school yet, would be M.J. Walker over at Jonesboro in Class 6A. And now he has plenty of state championship experience. They were denied a three-peat last year when they got beat by Liberty County. But M.J. Walker is a McDonald's All-American. He's a real deal over there. He doesn't even look like a high schooler. He has a college-ready body to make an impact right away. And if Jonesboro is going to want to get back to the Final Four and have another crack at the state title, he's really going to have to carry a load. Jonesboro has not been as great as they've been the past 3 or 4 years beforehand. Before this year, actually. And he's really going to have to just take on the burden and carry them. If they play Alatoona in the second round, that's going to be a really tough matchup because Alatoona, Coach Mark said, they play the best defense in the state outside of Green Forest every single year, and they're doing it without 7-footers inside. They're doing it with 6'4" post players, and they lock everybody down. So it's going to be up to M.J. Walker. If Jonesboro is going to have a shot at the state title, he's really going to have to carry the load for them.
Across all the games that you've watched this year, we know you watch a lot of GHSA basketball. Are there any teams, whether they're in the playoffs or not, that you said, wow, this team is really fun to watch, and maybe they're one of the most fun to watch teams you've seen this year? Are there any teams out there like that, maybe 2 or 3?
I'll touch on a team I just saw recently in the Region 8 Championship, which I was pleasantly surprised. Banks County is the real deal over in Class 2A. I mean, you hear about Banks County, it's kind of out of the way up there, over in near Commerce and in Homer, Georgia. But man, they can play. I was pleasantly surprised. I knew they were a good team. I have them ranked number 3 in the state in Class 2A now. But I saw them beat Monticello, who made a trip to the Final Four last year. They beat them 3 times in the season, and that's a team with good balance. And they have some sturdy big men inside. Kamal Wiley is he's got dreads. Just looks like a football player. He's a beast out there, rips down rebounds. He handles the ball fine. He does a lot of things. Got a guy named Dylan Orr who's about 6'6" inside, slender build, but man, when he goes up, he can rip the rim down with some dunks. Coach's son, Carl Cleveland, he's only a freshman, but I saw him hit 5 threes in that championship game, score a career high 21 points. That's a kid that, boy, oh boy, if he gets hot, he lights out from deep. And I do really like their point guard, Darius Bonds. He is a junior. He kind of reminds me of Will Washington of McIntosh, who graduated last year, and he's playing prep school now. So that's just a slender guy that can get into the lane, create, get his big men involved, and find open shooters. So I really do like Banks County. They were a lot of fun to watch. And that's a team that I believe could make a very deep trip in the Class 2A state tournament.
And one last question about what you've seen this year. In terms of across all classifications through the whole state, is there one player that you think is better than any other you've seen this season?
Oh, boy. Let me rack through my notes here. That's tough. I mean, there's just so much parity, team-wise, player-wise. Everything like that. I know everyone will say Colin Sexton is the most exciting guy to watch, but he's not necessarily my cup of tea just with all the antics he brings and the sideshow act. Not really my favorite player to watch just because there's just too much extracurricular activity going on behind him, but he's a great basketball player. But, boy, I think McEachin has some talent over there. Isaac Okoro is a major stud, but the best guy I saw in person this year, I was really impressed with Rayshawn Hammonds over at Norcross. He's a 6'8" forward. Going to Georgia, actually was able to stay in the state. He was very talented. He does a lot of good things, and when he's clicking on all cylinders, he's probably a top five guy in the state. He's very good. And one last guy before I forget, Landers Nolly over at Langston Hughes, he might not be a household name just yet, but that guy's going to go super high mid. He's going to be an ACC, SEC, whatever type guy right there. He is a killer over at Langston Hughes. He's a junior, a 6'6" wing that can stroke it from 3. He had over 50 points in the game once this year. He's known to hit 10 threes in the game. He'll hit 7, 6, whatever. He is a pure scorer, so that's a name to really keep in ear out for next year when he's a senior. Landers know he's a superstar stud.
And then where can fans find you online?
Everybody can find me online for Twitter at least, at KyleSandy355. And then on my website is sandyspiel.com. That is SandysSpiel.com. And I have a lot of great stuff on there. Everything you need for basketball season. I try and have you covered. I also started a podcast, Spiel and Dealing podcast, which usually releases on Thursday, which is like this, just a lot of basketball talk, just trying to bring out as much information to the public as possible because the state of Georgia is just phenomenal and it's so much fun being able to cover all this great action across the state, and it's just amazing to immerse myself in. So I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to spiel out some of my knowledge today and just get everybody up to date and ready and rocking and raring to go for the state tournament because it's going to be just incredible.
All right, Kyle. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you again for listening to us, the Atlanta Sports Podcasts. Remember to follow us on Twitter at ATL Sportscasts or subscribe to us in one or more of those directories. Please also tell your friends if you know anybody that likes high school sports or any of the professional teams or college teams in the state of Georgia. Let them know about us. We would love to hear from you as well. So please leave us a review in iTunes or Google Play, or you can comment on one of our posts on our website, or you can connect with us again on Twitter, or you can send us an email or contact us on our website, atlantasportspodcast.com. And we hope to see you next time with another show.